It's painfully difficult to tap into your inner energy and vibrations and frequency. I guess some of those words could be used interchangeably uh, because they are all subjective and they all mean different things for sure, but at the same time, it all kind of means how you're feeling in that moment, how your mindset is in a specific moment. And that's what all of these are, the vibrations, the energy, and the frequency. But I do feel that or rather, I have a hypothesis that we can generate these different frequency and vibrations by monitoring our breath. If you look at it, or the way I see it, heart is more like a pump. I mean, literally, it is a pump which is pumping blood. But at the same time, it's also pumping the vibrations because, if you have a pump in the water, it will pump the water, but at the same time, it's also creating the ripples of a certain frequency. So your heart is always pumping and creating vibrations, and those vibrations could be modulated by your breath because depending on if you take a deeper breath or a shallow breath, you could observe that your heart beats changes, and so therefore the frequency of the vibrations which the heart is pumping would change as well. So in a lot of ways you can change your vibrations and frequencies if you tap into that just by taking more controlled breath. And that being said, there's all, there's this terminology about the vibes in the sense like what type of person you are, and that is part of mindset, I believe, because you may be able to change your breathing rhythm, and that could change your emotional state rather in the sense like you are feeling better, but what you do with that better emotional state is dependent on your mindset. Because believe it or not, people do feel better or pleasurable even when they do something wrong. A sort of like an excitement, if by say breaking a law or something. So that feeling could be better, but if the mindset is not at the right level or on the right thing, then that feeling doesn't mean anything. It's if anything, that will become a triggering point for doing something wrong. And I've been there, and I bet like plenty of others have been there, where you have some sort of guilty pleasure, where you do something, you feel guilty, but you also feel pleasureful about that, and you sort of like create that triggering point within your behavior, within your body, within your physiology, and that guilty pleasure sort of become a craving of its own. So sure, there is vibrations, there is a frequency, and there is a energy, and all of these things, a combination of your mind and body and emotions, if you sort of like separate all three of them. But I believe like mind and body are like same entity, or like the space time is, because you can't separate the space and time, and likewise you can't separate the mind and the body. You can separate the aspects of it in the sense you can separate what mind does specifically, maybe like specific thinking pattern. You can document that in a book, and that becomes sort of like a collage of your thoughts. So in a way you can, I won't say separate, but you can pour out a part of your mind, but your mind and body are intertwined, because whatever thoughts you're experiencing right now, it's not just because of your mind, but it's also because of your body. because mind does absorb or sort of read the senses you have access to, but at the same time the body circulates the overall feeling and what you can make sense of that sense in a lot of ways. Because if you smell something amazing, let's just say if you smell some sort of flower, that flower, the mind encapsulate the data part of it, like, okay, if it's good smell or bad smell, and that's also a subjective, right? But your body sort of tap into how do you feel when you smell that particular flower, and likewise, how do you feel when you smell something which is disgusting. So all of that emotional states are sort of modulated by the body. So it's very difficult to kind of break the functionalities of the mind and body. And in a lot of ways, that's why one have to take care of both the mind and the body. And one have to train the mind and the body. One have to exercise the mind and the body. One have to ensure that they are progressing or growing with both the mind and the body. And for that, the most important part is to be secure with the mind and the body. And I can tell you that I have experienced so many moments of insecurities. And that's pretty natural as well, because if you don't feel insecure, that means you probably are a psychopath or something, because or narcissistic at the very least. But insecurity is good in a particular at a particular threshold, obviously, because everything in moderation is good. Because if your insecurity is overwhelming, then you might just give up for anything and everything, because you think that you're not good enough or not whatever enough. And at the other end, if you play with that insecurity, in the sense just understand why you feel what you feel, you may be able to work through some of the past issues or present issues and grow from that. For instance, a while back, I was feeling uncomfortable as well as insecure about my body, right? Like, I've grown so much weight and whatnot. So the only way I could get out of it is to work out, to have a plan and work through that. And in that sense, insecurity sort of helps. But if I just let it overwhelm me, then I would probably be like, okay, I can't do anything about this. This is my genetics. This is my whatever. It's out of my hands, and I'm not going to do anything about it, and just accept the fact that I'm a fat, and that is that. Then my reality starts to shape with that lens. So it's a constant battle for sure, and it's not easy. Haven't been easy for me. For a lot of my other insecurities are the internal identity, so to speak. And that's where the tools like meditation, like exercise, like training your mind and body comes into picture, because you're exposing yourself to these healthy stresses, which will help you to get over your insecurities, because it's create a new narration when you actually not just look at the challenge, but actively pursue to overcome that challenge. It creates this new narration within you that that shifts your identity. And like I said, it's a process, and I'm still walking on this process, and I don't know how long it will take or if it will ever end, because no matter how much work I do, I always feel that I have still a lot of work to do. And in a lot of ways, that's the beauty of life. And I'm actually stealing this thought, or maybe like, echoing this thought from one of the podcasts I was listening to earlier, between Aubrey Marcus and Jordan Peterson. And Aubrey was talking about this, that life is an infinite game, and no matter how much you start playing this game, it's the chances are you'll never get to that end goal. In the sense, if you're talking about the deeper end goals, like working through your process, becoming a compassionate person, then no matter how much work you do, there are going to be situations, there are going to be moments, there are going to be people, there are going to be circumstances which will trigger you, which will tip you off. And it also could be combination of other things, like you may be hungry, you may be going through different emotional state in that moment, and that triggers you and take away that compassionate moment or layer from you. And then you have to work through that, you have to process what really happened, and then figure out how you can become a better person, more compassionate person, and work through that. And that kind of applies for everything else too, right? Like you may be a genius in the sense, you have greater understanding of different concepts, and there might be some moment when you forgot a concept, or you misunderstood a concept, and then those are the moments from where you can learn and grow. So that's, in a lot of ways, that is the beauty of the life. And that's where I'm trying to figure out what are some of the challenges which I not only want to overcome, but also pursue actively, in the sense, like, just try to face them head on. And there've been a lot of recent changes in my life, which is making me look into some of these aspects of my life, and see what kind of life I want to live. And to be honest, like, a part of me, at least a few days back, was so discouraged with a lot of different things happening. And right now I feel a sort of encouraged, and part of that is because I stopped paying attention to everything else and just paying attention to right this moment. And that's a very difficult task in itself, because it's constantly that means that you have to constantly remind yourself to pay attention to this moment and pay attention to what you want from life, rather than all the things which you don't want, because your attention determine your experience. So if you pay attention to all the worst part of the life, then that's what your experience of life gonna be. And likewise, if you pay attention to all the best part of the life, then that's what your experience gonna be. But that doesn't mean that you should just ignore the worst part, if you just to kind of like experience the best part or be happy all the time. Because first of all, that's not possible, because if you are happy all the time, then you're not happy, in the sense you happiness is relative, right? So if you haven't experienced unhappiness, then that happiness doesn't mean anything. That becomes like a new baseline, and over time that baseline would become numb, I guess. But that doesn't mean that there are no states which you can experience all the time. I think like blissfulness and joy, and even love, these are some of the states which, if you experience all the time, that would be awesome. But it doesn't feel that it's possible, because life always brings up the tides of circumstances which at times pull you down. But in those downward moments, you have greater responsibility towards yourself, to pull yourself up, to go past the negative side of the life and look at the positive aspect of it. And that's where gratitude comes into picture, because gratitude is always looking at the positive side of the things. Whatever you're grateful for in this moment, in this day, in this year, in this life, whatever it might be, because when you're grateful, you're always looking for the positive signs within your life, which you should be celebrating, rather than all the depressive moments of your life, which you could feel sad about. So these are some of the tools, and it could be practiced, or it could be learned, in the sense you can practice it every single day. And even even while I know this, I still don't do it every single day. I miss out on writing my gratitude every single day, but I do have those moments of gratitude when I'm like having a different perspective at life. Like if all the things are going wrong in my life, I just look at what is actually I'm grateful for, and that's it. And that's a sudden shift in the mindset automatically shift my emotional states. And sometimes it takes a while, for sure, because there's always this delay between your feeling and between your thoughts and between where you want to be. And that's where the delayed gratification is actually helpful, because all the instant gratifications kind of like burn out like this, and delayed gratification sort of hold up for a longer period of time. And even though I know this, I've been like just thinking back at all the instant gratification I've been consuming or doing today. And there've been a lot, starting from social media and watching some random videos and whatnot. So I am aware of the fallacies, and I'm aware of all the hypocrisy. I'm sort of laying it out, because I understand all of these tools and still end up falling prey for some of these instant gratification, because in a lot of ways that's what being human is. Because there are times when you want that instant gratification to kind of like burst out of that bad feeling, and for years food have been that for me, in addition to a few other things. But food always felt like instant gratification, and especially dessert and sweet, because I mean that sugar rush, it's a high, it's an addictive force, for sure, and it can make you feel better in that moment, like instantaneously. So no wonder why most of the people crave for some sort of dessert, to kind of like get over their feelings and whatnot. So now I'm at a state where I'm trying to actively control some of these aspects, some of these addictions, because I don't want to be driven by these addictions. I don't want to go for a sweet or an ice cream every single time I feel bad, because that would mean I'm dependent on that substance to feel good. I want to cultivate a habit where I am able to sit with the feeling, whatever it might be, good or bad, and then process it through, and then work it through, rather than just instantly trying to shove it in, which doesn't help, because every single psychologist I can vouch for this, I guess, that when you try to suppress your feelings without addressing it, then it just get bubbled up over time, and then it comes out and as an outburst in different areas of life. And that's not a healthy way to live, because when you're bubbling up all of those states, all of those thoughts and emotions, all you're doing is creating a pressure within you, and that doesn't help, because you're creating a stress within you, and that affect your immune system, and that affects your health, mental as well as physical health. So there are so many layers to what you're experiencing right now. But the only thing I could think of which is helpful for me as well as for other people I admire was to bring your attention back to this moment. And attention is a very, very valuable commodity. It's more valuable than time in a lot of ways, because you may experience time as a constant flow, as time as a passage, but the real experience of your life would be the time as a memory, or time as an experience, because time as a passage is a constant. It's gonna be flowing no matter what. But time as an experience is relative. You can have a good time in a bad place if you know what triggers the good time part of you. And you can have a bad time in a good place, if you know how to make your life miserable. So time is relative, and those experiences gonna define your interaction with time. Sure, every single moment you see the time passing by, that just give you the data of like, okay, you passed a minute, you passed an hour, and so on. But you can experience a lifetime within a minute, depending on what you're doing, where you are at, with who you are at, and so many other factors. You can experience a lifetime within a moment, and at times you can live a lifetime without experiencing anything, by just constantly battling for attention from others, not from yourself, battling for approval from others, battling for happiness, peacefulness, or whatever it might be from others and not from within. And the only way to solve that puzzle is to dive within, because your emotional state is within you. Your thoughts are within you. And don't get me wrong, you're not your emotions, you're not your thoughts, you are not your behaviors at times either, because at times you could be driven by different degree of impulses which can overwhelm you and make you do things which you are not proud of, or you don't think you are, or you don't think it's part of your identity. And the tricky part is when that impulses become normalized, and that's when it becomes an addiction, so to speak, or triggering points, which is hard to get rid of. But nevertheless, these are impulses which you can control over time by practicing how to experience different impulses without acting on it. And that's where I believe most of us have issues with, for sure. But at the same time, we have access to so many resources and tools. This is first time in probably entire human civilizations where we have access to so many different tools, and not just the tools from a specific culture or a country or group, but tools from all over the world. And that again could also become overwhelming, because if you don't know what tools is right for you or how you can use these tools properly, it could become a nightmare. And the tools which I'm referring to are meditation, mindfulness, uh, breath work, sleep, music, psychedelics, different exercises, different adventure sports, different practices, artistic expressions. These are all different tools which can bring in serenity and peace within you. And that also means that you have options to pick up which tools resonate with you. And I personally think that we all should try all of these tools to figure out which actually works for you, which doesn't work for you, so that you can use the tool which actually works for you and dive deeper with it, and to kind of discover or rediscover, in a lot of cases, your true nature. And most of our true natures are lost as we grow up. And I'm not saying that all children are true to themselves per se. I honestly don't know when the experience become this inner dialogue as you grow up. I can't remember if I had this inner dialogue when I was 5 years old or 2 years old or 7 years old. I don't remember when this experiences became an inner dialogue. And I think a lot of it has to do with language as well, because probably as a kid, when you don't know a lot of words, you have no other option than to just experience it and express it with maybe your body language or actually doing it. But once as you learn language, not only you get disconnected from those experiences in some way, but also this language create this inner dialogue, so to speak, which separates you from your true self, because that inner dialogue kind of shape as your inner ego. And that inner ego could be motivated, could be influenced by so many other factors and variables, sometimes out of your control, and which can drive you to do a few things, make you impulsive. And that doesn't mean that you should be able to distance yourself from the consequences of your actions. But you can do that the moment you realize that you're not the same person you were when you performed those actions. If you said something hurtful to someone, sure, that was a part of you, but the moment you became aware and conscious about that, you have a choice to let go of that part. You have a choice to grow out of that shell. And at times it's very difficult, especially for me, it's very difficult to forgive myself, especially when I did or said something to someone else which I shouldn't have, and I, crossed my boundaries. Then I feel that it's difficult to forgive myself. But at the same time, at some point you have to, because you can move past and grow only if you forgive yourself. There is no other path. So that's a sort of a dilemma, because you are, in a lot of ways, you are the easiest person to forgive. And what I mean by that is, like, I know all the mistakes I've done, and I know that I have capability to forgive myself. So next time when I do a mistake, I have this knowledge that I can forgive myself, so I give myself permission to do that mistake. And it again depends on what type of mistakes. If it's not harming anyone, if it's not hurting anyone, then and if it's more about you, if you're making a mistake to I don't know, uh, uh, fail in the exam, for instance, or go on the stage and bomb as a comedian, or whatever those mistakes could be. That's actually helpful. But if you're making mistakes to hurt someone, then it becomes kind of painful, because then it's not just you gotta forgive yourself, but you gotta ensure that the other person forgives you too. Otherwise, there is this constant weight on you, which could be weighing you down. And there are moments when you have to forgive yourself because it's been so long back, because you were probably a kid, or you were probably under the influence of something, and then you have to understand and then come to a compromise that you would not do that again in some sense, and then lay out your new boundaries and create this new identity, which is sort of like a phoenix rising from the ashes of your past identity. And that's the core of death in some sense too, I guess, because you have to constantly kill your identity, which doesn't align with who you are today, who you are in this moment, and where you want to be. And so in that sense, you have to be constantly killing yourself, and that's a good thing, because in a lot of ways death is a cleanse, and killing your past identities is like cleansing yourself. And I guess with that note, I'm gonna start my today's meditation. And the technique which I'm gonna be practicing today would be Vipassana, which is pretty much like the same technique I use every single time. But I might also play around with some of the other techniques, such as gratitude practice, which helps to open up the heart, which helps to look at all the good things in the life and be appreciative for that. So I might play around with gratitude and forgiveness and some of those concepts along with Vipassana. And that's where I was getting at. Like, we all have these tools at our hand, which we can use the way we want to. So there is no set rule that I have to practice specific meditation for specific amount of time. I mean, there are good guidelines to follow, but it's not a, a compulsion, so to speak. So I have flexibility to modify what I want to do and what are my goals, what are my challenges. So I am gonna set an alarm for an hour.